Welcome, everyone, to the Everyday Podcast, your gateway to the casual side of business. I'm your host, Matt Esposito, and I'm going to let our wonderful co-host introduce himself.
I'm your co-host, Andrew Sadikov, and for today's episode, we are going to talk about photo and video.
And we have a new face at the table, Mr. Jared Sugar, who is our creative director over at EDE and also a multimedia specialist at EDS. So he's involved with both companies in the Everyday brand. So you guys are going to get some really good insight, So moving on, like Andrew said, the episode 3 is titled Let's Talk Photo and Video. So I guess to go over some of the general topics that we're going to be covering today, we're going to go over what both companies have to offer services-wise. Andrew and Jared are going to dive into our process, everything from equipment, onboarding, what makes our process unique and successful, and also, last but not least, post-production. And we're also going to get into photo and video for beginners. Jared and Andrew are going to go over some tips for that, and they're going to give their insight to the future of the creative departments for photo and video for both companies, what they see coming in the future. Before we get into that, make sure to check out last week's episode, which was titled Being a CEO at 20 and a COO at 19. We've gotten some great feedback on that, and that was definitely our favorite episode by far, even though there's been two. And also, the website is complete, so be sure to check that out. It's everydaypodcast.biz. That's B-I-Z at the end. Alrighty. So, just to get some background for the episode to start, EDE, which was the first company in the Everyday brand, started solely as a photo and video company. So this is one of our staple services. This is our biggest department. This is our bread and butter. This is where we come from. And EDS is solely photo and video. So, we're going to have many different episodes about this topic. Next, why photo and video is important. For EDE, businesses utilize photo and video in marketing efforts. Video is king in 2020, and so is photo, whether we're doing social media content or, content for web, email, businesses of all sizes use this organic, high-quality content that we create. And by content creation, by photo and video, we mean high-quality organic. We don't mean stock footage. That's our specialty, is coming in and giving, showing people what your business is firsthand. And before I hand it over to them, I want to state that one of my favorite things when it comes to being a business owner or running a multimedia marketing agency and a photo and video company, I love visiting the shoots. That's one of my favorite parts of the day, when there's time to do that. And on top of that, even when I'm sitting in with the client delivering anything from our creative departments from both companies, I love seeing the smile on their faces, just with the client when they're sitting there seeing their dream production or just putting their vision, alive, making it alive and making that happen is priceless in my eyes. I don't know if you guys have anything to add on top of that.
No, I think we're on the same page as far as that goes.
All right, so moving on to what the Everyday brand companies have to offer photo and video-wise. So starting with EDE, everything photo and video-wise that we produce within that company is for promotional advertising use. So we do things like business trailers, TV spots, social media content, like I said, anything that has to do with content for the website, using an email blast, anything that falls under, the professional markets, anything to do with advertising efforts. And for Everyday Studios, we cover weddings, graduations, sports, anything within the entertainment industry, special events, everything from A to Z that's more in the personal markets, doesn't have to do with like business and marketing and advertising. So moving on from all the background information, Mr. Andrew and Jared are going to be talking about our process when it comes to the creative departments in the Everyday brand.
So the most important thing for us as, content creators is to showcase your business as far as EDE goes, or your event, whatever you're doing as far as EDS goes, as best as we can. So we want to focus on the best things that represent your company and your brand, the things that make you stand out, the things that, that you're proud of, and the reason that you started it, to begin with. So, I know Jared is a lot more familiar with the onboarding and storyboarding process, so I'll have him talk a little bit more about that. Go ahead.
Absolutely. So, a lot of companies, marketing companies will come to you with a regular formula or process that they have for every client, to create a piece of video or a set of photos. And that works a lot of the time. But what we do is a lot more customized and close to home for some of these small businesses. We come in and we really get to know the company before creating any content. We'll do a day of just kind of shooting around and talking to the owner about what they like and what they want to see in the content that we produce for them. I know personally I'll go on their website, search their Instagram, look at competitors and see what everybody else is doing to kind of push the envelope for whatever business we're kind of trying to dive into here. So that way we have a firm grasp on what we're creating before we even really start. I think that's one of the most important things for us, is to really get to know our clients before we dive into this kind of content creation, because it's that much more, close to home. And I think we do a better job at doing our jobs when we really get to know our clients that way.
Right, exactly. And a good example of that would be, some of the clients we worked with, it used to be, we come in there, they give us a script for kind of the content that we want, and we spend, the time at the shoot to try and set everything up and try and figure everything out. But it's a lot more efficient, to have things beforehand and to sit down with your team and whoever's going to be working, especially if you can sit down with the client you're going to be working with and decide, okay, this is what we're going to cover, this is how we're going to cover it, because the shoots then go a lot smoother.
For sure.
That way, once you already know what you're trying to go for. As far as the shoots go, let's move towards, we were working with somebody, we set up a storyboard, we know what we're filming, we know what points we're going to hit. Now we come to the shoot, we got to take care of a bunch of different stuff. We got to take care of the environment, the sound, how we're going to push the story, and all that stuff, right? So I know Jack, he's not here with us today, but he's the one who actually taught me to really focus on what's in my shots. He was the one that told me that the biggest step for him, where he saw his improvement was, and what he recommended, for everybody else, was to really pay attention to everything in the background, to everything in the foreground. Is there a background in a foreground? Maybe you have a very flat shot. Maybe you have a very dynamic shot. And from there, use that towards your story.
Absolutely.
I don't know, you could tell us even more about that, because you've been shooting, a lot longer than I have.
For sure. I mean, everything in the frame serves a purpose, whether it helps tell the story, or helps create a more colorful image, or makes somebody stand out in an interview. Everything in your frame should have a purpose, and I think that's very important to consider when you're composing frames for anything, whether it be a business trailer or just a piece of social content. Everything in your frame definitely serves a purpose, and in creating each shot, you kind of have to have an eye for this kind of stuff, but at the same time, learning, setting a camera down and learning from the start, you kind of begin to see how each frame you set up becomes more complex when you add a background and a foreground. If you just have a plain white wall behind someone, per se, in an interview, it's not going to look any different than your next guy's shot. But if you take a plant and you add some rim light and some backlight to your interviewee, then I think you'll be able to make your shot pop a lot more, and it'll stand out in your video. There's a lot of ways that you can go about composing frames, but I think as you begin to develop an eye for this kind of stuff, as Andrew and I and Jack and Cortez really have, you'll be able to create more diverse, dynamic shots. And I think that's, some of the most fun you can have with film is, composing some of these creative shots. And
exactly, yeah. And another thing I want to bring up was you also have to adjust to whoever you're shooting with. So for some things, we shoot maybe a relatively wide shot with multiple people in it, little movement, kind of a corporate looking, say, a TV commercial we want to shoot, right? Another shoot you recently did, actually, for Manasquan Lighting, you involved some very close-up handheld camera work with some of the, putting together of these lights that was going on.
For sure.
Again, so being able to tell the difference when which shot is appropriate, and having a little bit of a foresight to know, okay, this is what it's going to look like, or this is what I want to compose, as opposed to, let's shoot it, see if we can fix it in post. And the funny thing is actually, we used to make fun of Matt and the rest of the team when we were first a very fledgling company, because we used to think that we can fix a lot of things in post. And there's a very famous saying, crap in, crap out,
Yep.
which means that whatever you pour into, your editing rig is whatever you're going to get out of it. And that's definitely been a big change for us to really, and I mean, it's a pretty straightforward thing for most, new photographers, cinematographers, they quickly realize that they can't do everything in post, but really just focus on how far you can take, the and camera stuff, nailing the white balance and stuff like that. You can change white balance in post, but it's so much better if you get it right on set, and other things like that really, help out.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to get your camera settings right in camera the first time, it's only going to help you out later in post. And I think that's something obviously you get better at over time. And like Andrew said, adding knowing when to add motion to a shot, or bring in a stabilizer, or shoot handheld is also something that comes with time, creating this stuff. And you can make something so simple as drinking a glass of water look interesting by adding the right shot, or adding some motion to it. And I think that's a really important part of filmmaking that a lot of people don't understand going into it. Creating a dynamic, diverse shot has a lot more to do with it than setting a camera down on a tripod and setting it up the right way. And I think we got pretty good at that over time, and I believe that's very important.
Of course. So moving on, let's talk about working with people. It's very rare that you're going to have, a video that you produce that's going to have no people in it. Of course, you could do, we do spots for Circle BMW where we showcase cars.
B-roll.
Exactly, that'll be your B-roll, just pretty cinematics. Of course, you can have some shots where the people aren't really doing anything. They could be, running through a field, and you're not really focused on their specific characteristics. You're mostly focused on the environment that you've created for them. But regardless, you're almost always going to be working with people. You're going to have somebody speaking. You're going to have somebody showcasing their business. We always like to put a face to the businesses that we work with. It makes a very big difference for somebody, as opposed to seeing a coffee shop and seeing an owner talk about their coffee shop. So let's talk about, making people comfortable and working with people. What are some of your go-tos when you want to make somebody comfortable in the environment that you're shooting in?
So one of my go-tos is definitely music. People click with music, and it tends to make them feel more comfortable in the environment that they're in, especially when we're on set and they have a ton of lights on them. People tend to feel pressured and stutter and not really be true to themselves when you're sitting in front of a camera, myself included. It's not something that's very easy to do without experience. So setting some music down, especially if we don't need audio in the scene, is definitely one of my go-tos for making people feel comfortable. It's not easy to feel comfortable in front of the camera. I mean, we're sitting here in front of the camera right now, and
yeah, exactly.
I agree.
We're all not pro actors, but so any normal business owner that isn't comfortable with this kind of content creation, because this is very new to them. Like 90% of the business owners that we work with, haven't sat in front of a professional camera and a set of lights, and audio equipment, and it tends to make you sweat. So you really do want to make these people feel comfortable when you're setting up an interview and you're having these people, be true to themselves and speak about their business, and sound convincing, because you don't want it to sound like it's being read off a script.
Right.
And another big thing is definitely positive feedback. It's something that I always really try to do, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later when it comes to some of the equipment, because some equipment allows you to do it better than others. But constantly, if somebody's doing something, this shot looks awesome, this shot looks great, you have to be in the right mindset. You have to be in the mindset that you want your talent in, right? So unless you want them to be upset or aggravated or frustrated, you have to keep your environment positive. You have to be going through your settings. Everything could be going wrong. You could have just run out of batteries. You're shooting from a DC wall outlet. There's too much noise in the background. Maybe the lights are wrong, and you're over here trying to save the shoot. That's possible, but you cannot let your client know, even if something like that is going on. They need to believe that everything is perfect. They need to believe that they're doing great, that the shoot's going to come out awesome. And a lot of it really translates onto the camera very much. So if you've ever taken any sort of acting classes, you know that on stage, in theater, you have to exaggerate all of your movements, because people from the back row cannot see your emotions, cannot see some of the movements that you make. Everything has to be very big. On camera, it's the other way around. A camera will pick up every little slight detail. A close-up shot, you could have been unhappy about something in the morning and just have, your eyebrows, you're frowning a little bit, and, that'll immediately be apparent. So all these little things, the environment that you create, how you react, and how, you inspire the person you're working with are very important.
For sure. I mean, we can't have a business owner rushing us through this process.
Right.
And that's something that really a lot of people don't understand either. A lot of people think, we come in and shoot the video in an hour and get it done, when really, you need to set a day aside to get something done right. Most of the time, I mean, this isn't something to be rushed. You need to have your schedule cleared. You gotta have your mind free. You can't be stressed. Like Andrew said, it shows through in the final product. Even for myself, I kind of turn my brain off when I'm shooting these videos and doing work for clients. It's something that shows through in your work when you're shooting it, and it's something that shows through when you're the interviewee or participant in the video. You got to have time to set aside to do this stuff, and it can't be rushed. It's kind of got to come natural, and you kind of got to block the world out when you do this.
Right, exactly. So moving forward a little bit, we can still talk about environment and people. You have to really understand how your shot is coming together. So very little things can make a big difference. For example, we've got a guy who likes to tap his feet. Always, whenever he's talking in front of the camera, he's tapping his shoes in the background. And if I've got a boom mic that's aimed above him to get audio from below, that's going to pick up his shoe. You're going to get the most high quality shoe tap you've ever heard. But if I don't want that in the video, then I got to say, okay, listen, either don't tap your your shoes, or even take them off. Yeah. Be able to adapt to your environment, get creative. Okay, you want to tap your foot, you're a little nervous, you're not used to being on camera. Okay, not a problem. Take your shoe off, and then I don't have that problem.
For sure.
Changing stuff in the background, same story. Sometimes you'll have a certain audio source in the background, and as simply rotating the shot around might be able to alleviate that problem. Or turning off something in the building, whether it's a specific part of the AC system that's being really loud, that, maybe we can put it on standby for the 3 minutes that we're shooting and turn it back on afterwards. Knowing all these things and really thinking outside of the box, outside of just your camera and within your environment, is very useful.
For sure.
So let's talk about editing and post-production. What are some things that really separate a quality editor and a quality, post-producer, if you will, from somebody who just wants to throw the shots in, get them out as quickly as they can?
So for me personally, I really sit there and dissect each shot I take. And I mean, so I bring all my footage in. Let's start from the beginning.
Right.
Import all my footage. And each shot I take, I really want to make sure I import all the good takes and the bad takes to review them over and over again and pick the best from them all. So I really take my time dissecting each clip and then bringing in, I set an in point and an out point on all of my, I cut the fat off all the footage and I bring them in, and then I'll review each take. Say we do 3 takes of one shot. I'll review each of those takes numerous times to make sure I have my best shot before I bring it into my timeline. And I think that that's the biggest part. A lot of people bring all their footage in and they get so excited to make an edit, and they just start pulling footage, right from their right from one of the bins, and you could be skipping over a lot of great takes that you took just because you want to get this done and you're excited and you pull one of them first. I think that one of the most important parts is reviewing your footage accurately and making sure that you're using those good clips that you took, because you did all this work for a reason. You really want to take advantage of that. Aside from that, I mean, you kind of really have to be selective. You have to have a selective eye, and you need to be able to take your time on this stuff. It's not something that you can rush. I mean, I sit there and I really enjoy this kind of stuff, and I know a lot of people do too. But you need to be able to sit there and kind of enjoy it while you do it, because otherwise it'll feel like work. This isn't something that feels like work for me, and I feel like it's very important to be very selective in your cuts, but also knowing when to cut something as well is a big part of editing that was hard for me in the beginning. You have so much great footage, and you can shoot all day and have all these beautiful clips, but you need to make a 30-second video at the end of the day. You got to know what to cut and what to keep, which is something that is very hard for a lot of editors in the beginning. But over time, that's something that I've worked on myself, and it kind of starts to come naturally.
Right.
I'll find myself wanting to keep some beautiful shots in a video that I don't necessarily need because the video is only 30 seconds. So knowing when to keep stuff and when to cut stuff is very important as well, and I think that also makes a great editor.
Right, exactly. And coming back to another thing that Jack had taught me, even though he's not here with us, is clients will come up to us and say, oh, you guys have a drone, we've got we currently have an Inspire Pro, gigantic thing, it folds its legs up and down, oh, you've got a great drone, you've got all this different stuff, can we use it for my shoot, can we use it for this, that, the other? Well, listen, if we're doing a 60-second video of the service department in your company, probably not the right place to use a drone shot.
For sure.
The best I could do is offer like an establishing shot of the outside of your building, and that'll be one shot that's probably going to be 3 seconds long, and that'll be it. And I don't have to pull a drone out to get an establishing shot of your company. Like you guys have a drone, you guys have a cinema camera. Okay, well, if you're an electrician, how am I going to use a drone? I definitely can use it. I can whip it out, I can start recording things with it, but it's not necessarily going to add value to the video. So as beautiful as the footage might be, as cool as it might be to have a bird's eye view of something, if it doesn't pertain to the company, there's better stuff that can be used there,
Absolutely.
So people definitely get carried away with stuff like that. And again, clients are clients. They are not, that's not their job to be a cinematographer. So definitely, point them in the right direction. But as a filmmaker, it's your responsibility to say, you know what? We're not going to use a drone shot here because it's not appropriate.
Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in the magic of all the technology, even myself included. I mean, I tend to be using a gimbal or a stabilizer a lot of the time when I really could be shooting handheld, and that's something to really, keep note of and remember as a cinematographer and a creative director. It has to lend to the story. The story wins every time, and if what you're using and the equipment you're using isn't lending to the story to help tell the story that you're creating, it doesn't need to be in the shot. And that's something that we all need to be thinking about every time we go out on a shoot and compose a shot. Is this helping me tell the story, or is this helping me mimic a trend or something that I'm seeing on social media, which is something that can be so easy to do now. There's so many trends and trendy techniques now that it's kind of easy to get stuck in that gimbal, stabilizer, equipment heavy mindset, when really like all you need is a camera in your hands to create a great shot a lot of the time. And I think handheld footage is very often overlooked.
Right, exactly. So let's talk about going the extra mile. Some of the things that we do. We know other cinematographers do this, and there's some guys that don't. So cameras can shoot in many different profiles. You can have the camera shoot in full auto. You can shoot it manually. You can follow, the 180-degree rule. You could have the camera decide. You can shoot in a normal, codec. You can shoot log footage, or you can even shoot raw footage if you want to. You got to understand what all these things mean, which one's appropriate for your work, and also not always to just pick the easiest way out. If I'm shooting a video for Circle BMW, if I'm shooting in the middle of the day, the car is outside, so I know that I'm going to have a lot of light. I'm going to be having to, either close my lens all the way or crank the shutter speed, use ND filters, whatever I can do to, mitigate that. But I know that it's a 30-second spot of a car. I don't have to shoot RAW. I don't even have to shoot 4K. I don't even have to shoot 120. But you still do. And you still should, because these are things that you have to practice, So even though I could create a fine video without doing any of these things, don't cheat yourself with, okay, this is an easy thing I could bang out in a couple of hours. Really, take the steps to go through there and shoot in, maybe a flatter profile so that you can practice color grading. You can practice, setting up your white balance. If you're shooting Sony S-Log, you can practice wildly overexposing everything so that it looks good in post. Stuff like that. It's definitely important to get that into your head. Again, when I first started color grading, the first thing I ever color graded, for one thing, it probably sucked. And for another thing, it took probably an infinite amount of time. I mean, probably 3, 4, 5 hours just sitting there messing around with
heavy
all
saturation,
right,
heavy contrast,
exactly. I'm sitting there with the saturation slider going 100 looks good, 120 looks good. Where's the happy medium? What am I doing?
I mean, a big part of this job and a lot of the pride I take in having this job, is it's different every day, and we're constantly learning. As good as we can get at this at editing and shooting is one thing, but I'm constantly learning, and I'm constantly teaching myself new things and teaching my teammates new things. And I think a big part of that is always being willing to experiment with things like Andrew's talking about, like shooting S-Log and different file formats and slow motion. I learn by going where I'm not comfortable. You have to bring yourself out of that comfortable zone, and I think that's very important when creating. You should never think you know everything, because truly, you never will. And I think everybody should always be willing to constantly learn and keep experimenting.
Exactly. So as far as we're concerned, every single shoot we do, even if it's super simple, even if it's, this is a good client of ours, they've been around for a while, we're going to do a free shoot for them. I'm going to, set everything up correctly. I'm going to color grade my footage correctly. I'm going to go through all of the audio that I have, and I'm going to bring it into Adobe, Audition. As great as it might sound, we've got DR10s. I love those things. Fantastic audio, pretty much right out of the box. If you don't know what you're doing, it's easy to just, raise the gain and you're good. But bring it into, Audition. Find a noise profile, cut it out, make sure that everything sounds as good as you can.
For sure.
Compress it if you have to. All these other things. And you'll notice that you get very good at it. Yeah. The first time I ever color graded, like I said before, probably atrocious. I don't remember off the top of my head when that was. But now, if I've got a 30-second clip, I can go through the shots very quickly. Yeah. And I can do minor adjustments. I'm going to, if I'm shooting Sony, right, I might raise the shadows because Sony likes to be very dark.
There you go.
I might, bring the blacks down a little bit depending upon how I want the scene to look, or maybe vice versa.
Green skin tones.
Exactly. Fix the skin tones, some saturation, make sure that my exposure is correct. And within 15 minutes, wow, it already looks so much better than it does.
Oh yeah, I mean, that's the most rewarding part of color grading. I'll bring my mom or my girlfriend into the room when I'm color grading or when I'm finished, and I'll show them the product. Before I touched up.
I do that to Matt all
the
time.
And then after, and it's truly like anybody with you don't even need an eye for this kind of stuff.
Right.
But and it's funny because watching the footage through before you even touch color. It looks okay. You're like,
right,
this looks good enough. And then you go through and you color grade and you touch up, and really, like, truly, when you turn it on and off after you've touched up everything, it's a huge difference.
Right, exactly.
And a lot of people don't realize that, and it's a huge part of what we do. You want this stuff to look the best it can possibly be, especially when it's being screened on television for Comcast or something.
Right.
You want these colors to be accurate, and you want everything to look sharp, especially when you're putting all this other work in with lighting and audio and camera. Color grading is an often overlooked asset, and I think we do a good job at perfecting that.
Exactly. So let's go and talk about some of the equipment that we have.
Cool.
So you and I are both big Sony guys.
Yeah, for sure.
I pushed the company in a Sony direction for cameras. We've got A7s right now that are recording this.
Yeah.
We've got an FS5 sitting on the table here. And everything like that. And I know when you came into the company, you already had, your own Sony gear.
Sure.
You already went through those decisions.
Which was perfect.
So tell me a little bit about Sony. What inspired you to choose Sony?
So I grew up shooting Canon like everybody else. 5D, Mark III, DSLRs with mirrors in them, those old things. But, after Sony evolved with the mirrorless system and the A7S III came out, and I want to say it was like 2015, 2014.
Right.
I swapped over to the A7 series, and it was great. I mean, these things are little beasts. They put out great colors. Everything is just, the menu systems could use a little work. They're a little complicated, but these cameras are awesome. From adapting to any type of glass you need them to be adapted to. I adapt these things to my old film camera lenses. And just all the features in general. They shoot great slow motion. They're really tiny. They fit in your hand great. That was a big thing for me, just portability. The Sony system has been really reliable for me over the years. It's definitely a little bit more techy. It doesn't feel as, true camera as like a 5D with a shutter in it feels, but I love these things. And you know what? The A7 IIIs that we have never failed me. They shoot great slow motion. They shoot great 4K, and you have a good set of lenses on these things, and they'll do great work, truly. And I think the best camera, in general, is one that doesn't take you out of, what you're shooting. You kind of want to be able to use these cameras as a tool, kind of like an extension of what you're looking at, the filmmaking that you're doing. And Sony has kind of always let me do that without thinking about, oh no, what button am I pushing, or what wheel am I spinning. It kind of feels natural in my hands. And so I think that's something that's helped me stick with Sony for all these years, is that it kind of feels like more of an extension of me rather than just like, a camera in my hands, which is very important as a creator and a filmmaker.
Exactly, yeah. And when we originally went through the decisions, Canon didn't even have really a mirrorless lineup at that point.
Yeah.
I mean, they had whatever I want to say, Cybershot-esque little cameras, but that was nowhere near what we were looking for.
Vlogging-esque cameras, yeah.
Right.
For sure.
And the first camera we had was actually an A6300, and a lot of the features that camera had that were built into it that realistically nobody who shoots on that, unless they know what they're doing, uses, helped us get to where we were. So again, 4K video, that's what they market that camera as. It's a 4K camera, which is fantastic. It does shoot 4K, shoots good 4K. It's the Sony E-mount, so you can put whatever nice lens you want on it. And then you keep going down the list. Okay, 1080p video at 120 frames per second. That gives you a lot of freedom that you're just not going to get.
I love my 120, man.
Right, you're not going to get that with Canon's, 1080, 60. Before the new mirrorless lineups that they offer, and even still, the cameras, Canon to shoot over 60 frames at 1080 is going to cost thousands of dollars. Right?
And they intentionally want you to step up to their cinema camera lineup just to shoot that kind of stuff. And having 120 1080 is invaluable. I try and tell everyone, every filmmaker, creator I talk to, like, you can really stretch these shots when you're shooting in 120 frames per second. Whether it be a business trailer or just a piece of content highlighting a specific product or item, you can really stretch these slow motion shots to look extremely well balanced and beautiful, even if you're not using a piece of stabilization equipment like a gimbal. 120 1080 is truly invaluable, and with the A7 III, I think that was definitely a huge step up for Sony in that movement. So I'm excited to see what happens with this Sony A7 III, A7S III rather.
Right, exactly. And going from there, Sony had all of their picture profiles, built into the cameras, so you can shoot S-Log on. I mean, the 6300, I'm pretty sure you can get one, maybe without a lens, but under $1,000. And if you go used market, I mean, there's billions of these things out there. Facebook Marketplace in your area, unless you live, in a very, very remote place, I'm sure there are tons around you. Everybody's got them. They're all the same camera. There's no kind of, even Canon will offer different packs. You can have unlock different, you can unlock C-Log for extra prices. And I don't know much about other lineups, but I know there are a lot of cameras that are very customizable. Which is great, for if you're buying a new camera for yourself. But with the Sony series, you do benefit from the fact that they're all the same. Any A6300 thing that you look up online is going to apply to your A6300. And same thing for the A7s and anything else that they offer.
There's no mechanical parts to break with these mirrorless cameras either. You don't have a shutter, a moving shutter, to wear down over time. So that's just something, less to worry about. And as technology emerges, we've seen Canon, we've seen Nikon, we've seen Panasonic, everybody step up to mirrorless. So this is definitely the next wave.
Absolutely. And it's funny because people went crazy when these first came out. It was either I absolutely love mirrorless and I'm never going back, and the DSLR guys that were like, this is crap and I'm never shooting mirrorless in my life.
And now it's like we're not going back to mirrors.
Exactly. There's no real reason.
To your flappy mirrors.
As far as other stuff, one of my favorite pieces of equipment that we own would be the DR10s.
For sure. Underrated.
Absolutely fantastic. It's one of the first things that we ever had. And even back then, I love shooting video and I don't really like audio. I was never really into not music production, not audio correction, not anything.
Nobody is, you can love video, but no one is willing to admit, that they love audio. I feel like it's something that you kind of fall into, so.
Exactly. And I'm sure people that make music, that's different. But as far as sitting there and correcting voiceovers, I don't know. I personally haven't met somebody who's like, yes, that's what I want to do.
I love audio. No.
Right.
Personally, I that was something I always kind of strayed away from. Audio is something I think a lot of filmmakers kind of try to not ignore, but everybody wants to color grade. Everybody wants to work with 4K footage or 120 slow-mo, but nobody wants to really sit there and master a piece of audio and take out all the small details that really make it crackle, or get to know what makes a piece of audio sound better. But that's something I think that comes with creating professional content and starting to acknowledge that audio is extremely important. in what we do. And something like the DR10 makes that very easy. You
Right.
slap it onto a client during an interview, and it's something that separates, professional content from amateur content. Professional audio will make or break a video.
Absolutely. And it's time and time again, if you look this up on YouTube, you'll agree, even as somebody just watching the videos, that a video with mediocre, quality video,
Yep.
maybe it's 1080p, maybe it's 720p, not the perfect brightness, not the perfect exposure,
But good audio.
but with good audio is going to do better than a
Yep.
beautiful video with crappy audio.
For
It's
sure.
just so uncomfortable to listen to that.
Yeah.
So then I got a question for you, right? Everybody's moving towards these wirelessly synced microphones. I know Rode just released a new lineup, or relatively
Go,
new.
the Rode Wireless
Yes,
Go.
exactly.
Yeah.
And all these things. I actually love the DR10 because it is not wireless. It takes me 2 seconds to sync it in Premiere.
Yeah.
I don't have to deal with interference. I don't have to pay $1 million for this thing.
Yeah.
Definitely some of these waves you really got to think. Do I have to go and now update all my gear to sync wirelessly so that I can save 3 seconds in post-productions?
Yeah.
Or, is some of this stuff actually great value? And look at all the problems I'm going to avoid. I'm never
Yeah.
going to be shooting in New York City and I've got no audio
Yeah.
because, there's a gigantic, amount of content flying through the air from Wi-Fi, from cell towers, from everything that's interfering.
I think, specifically with the DR10, it's an interview style microphone, an onboard mic, for a someone else speaking when you want audio on someone. And for that use, I really don't see the wireless, any advantages to the wireless. I think it could be, a good upgrade for someone that maybe it doesn't have a DR10. If you have something like a DR10 already, there is no reason to step up.
Right.
It's kind of one of those the law of diminishing value things. Like for your money, the DR10 will do you just fine. But when you start spending double that to get the same value, you're spending the money to get less in return. And I think something like the DR10, I recommend the Rode Smart Lav to people all the time, beginner filmmakers and people just starting out. It's a Rode mic like the DR10, much like the DR10, that doesn't have a receiver, but instead plugs right into your phone. And
Right,
you use an
exactly.
app just like the DR10's receiver does, and it's a great piece of equipment. It costs $50. You have great sounding audio, and it's a beginner step into something like the DR10. And I think the law of diminishing return really doesn't. You begin to see where some of this equipment isn't necessary, even for professionals like us. Like, we really don't need to spend the extra money on something like the Rode Wireless Go when we can just use the Rodes, the DR10s, just as we are.
Right, exactly.
It sounds great. We have great audio. Don't change something that's not broken.
Right, exactly. So getting into photos and videos, content, not content, but equipment for beginners, right? So let's talk a little bit about that. We were very fortunate to have an A6300. I think it has features that you're just not going to find, for that kind of price. But to start with, iPhone, right? And really any mobile phone at this point. I know, not just iPhones, Samsungs and everything else, or Motorola, and they produce, some crazy phones with some really awesome cameras. At what point do you think, what camera do you think really stands out from a mobile phone? Because for me, realistically, anything lesser than a Sony 6300, I really wouldn't bother. If I don't have the profiles, to color correct my image, and if I don't have, the 120, 1080, then...
For us, I wouldn't bother with anything less than a 6300, only because we've become so accustomed, to this kind of the level of quality we work with. For someone starting out, maybe you can start with an iPhone, shooting 4K, and then kind of adapt yourself to start to work with higher level cameras. But for us,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the A6300 is definitely an advanced piece of technology, whether or not it's full frame. It's a big argument whether or not you can see a difference in full frame to crop sensor cameras. And something like the A6300, does great video, does great photos, and especially when you're publishing for social media, it's up for debate. A lot of people will agree or disagree, but you really can't see a lot of these differences between crop sensor and full frame sensors for social media. If
Right.
you're posting to Instagram or Facebook, no one's gonna look at your photo and be like, oh, he shot this with a crop sensor camera.
Right. It's gonna, Facebook and Instagram and even like YouTube and other publishing.
Compression, yeah.
They're gonna compress it so much so that you won't even be able to tell
Yeah.
if I shot it on an FS5 or on a red weapon.
Yep. Yep. Unfortunately.
So exactly, but for beginners, I would definitely say start with your phone.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a piece of equipment that you have, and you can start learning from there.
Yep.
And at the point at which I would upgrade, I would shoot for something that has these more advanced features.
Yeah,
When you don't know the
yourself,
Canon side of it.
Yeah.
So, but as far as like Sony, exactly.
Any upgrades, I found it's best to wait until you find yourself needing an extra. You need something to lend to your creative style. So like when you find yourself ready, to start doing slow motion, or you find yourself ready to take that next step into something more advanced, then you upgrade. If you're just starting out, you don't need 120 frames per second. You don't need 4K resolution unless you have a crazy editing rig. These are things that like you need to start using when your own ability allows you to. You should start learning first, get to know an editing software, get to know basic cutting, and get to know composing your shots before you step into the ring with like something like heavy slow motion or advanced effects. Like these are things that are worth investing in when you're ready to start learning about them more intensely.
Right. So then I've got a question for you as far as lighting.
Cool.
So I was at a party, and this girl comes up to me, and she knows I do photo and video stuff, and she's like, listen, tell me, these ring lights that all these like influencers post on their Instagrams and stuff, are they a gimmick? Or are they just posting them because they look cool? And it's like it's a nice little ring, and you can put a mirror in front of it, and then you get those funny little Instagram and Snapchat little posts? Or do they actually do something? And I thought about it, and like a color accurate, like a CRN, like a high CRN ring light would probably be really good.
So from what I hear, a lot of these ring lights, but what a lot of YouTube creators like about the ring lights is they give you that glare in the eye. So when you're shooting high res, you get that ring in the middle of your eye. And that's what a lot of people like about them. Do they give you color accurate, lighting? Can you match, color temperature on all of them? Probably not. A lot of these Amazon ones that you see for $20 are just going to be one color temperature, and you're going to be able to turn them on and off. I think they do serve a good purpose, for beginners, and they really teach you that good lighting can change a video. A video shot in natural light and with LEDs coming over you, in a blank room, can be shot, with a $3,000 lens and just look like it was shot on a phone,
Right.
whether based on what lighting you're using. And you really don't need expensive lights to make your image pop or look professional, as long as you know how to light it right. You have a good key light, you have a good backlight to separate the back of your focus from the background. You'll have a good, nice composed image that looks professional, rather than something that just looks flat and nothing's popping. You need some contrast.
Right.
You need some backlight. It doesn't matter if you have an expensive light, and I think that's where these ring lights come into the picture. They kind of teach people that, and I think that's important. So if people want to keep using them for TikTok videos and Instagram stuff, I say all power to them.
Plug and play, super easy stuff.
Yeah.
As far as having something that you can learn from, get multiple lights, get LED lights, so that you can mess around with where I position them, the angles, the heights, behind, in front, to the left, to the right, and realistically three is a good number, but you can get away with 2 lights. You can even get away with 1 light, but having all that stuff is definitely going to push you in the right direction. But as far as if you want to casually shoot a video, I don't see a problem with the ring light at all.
No, for sure not.
Exactly. All right, so
moving on to, and yes, I'm still here. Moving on to talking about the future of the ED and EDS creative photo and video departments. I'm going to let Andrew and Jared kind of give their insight onto where they want things to go, what they've been happy with, if they would change anything. But I think it's great that we have two team members here so they can, they see this stuff firsthand, give their description of how they want things to, continue to progress in the future.
Cool.
All right. So let's talk about pushing our equipment and kind of a new direction for it. Most importantly, the Sonys, you and I are both going to agree that those are fantastic.
Great.
There's really not anything that we would want, unless an A7 III's comes out, which we're all hoping for. Yeah, the S3. Jack actually owns a Canon EOS R, and he filmed a video for Circle BMW that I ended up editing.
Yeah.
And it was very good.
Yeah.
I honestly was incredibly impressed with Canon colors are famous for being fantastic.
Yeah.
And obviously he knows how to set up a shot to make it a very nice shot, so there was no problem with that. But I was editing the footage. I was very impressed with it. I didn't see a reason to switch to it for myself personally.
Yeah, it's all personal preference, and there's no arguing that Canon has color science down.
Absolutely.
They have great skin tones. Everybody will, argue that till they'll die, and I will not,
Absolutely,
I will not discredit them. They do great. They do great skin tones. Their color science is amazing, and that's that's why they had the Pioneer 5D be so successful. But there are other competitors now. Sony's doing a great job with this stuff. And again, don't fix something that isn't broken. I really think we're doing a flawless job with these Sonys. It's nice because we have multiple, so color matching is not a thing.
Right, exactly.
Just shooting it with different systems can get kind of like a little bit of a headache when you have to start color matching and stuff.
I couldn't imagine trying to match a Canon to a Sony.
Yeah, it's just kind of a little bit of a headache. You kind of have to adjust white balance and tint and skin tones gets annoying. So as far as, where we want to go, I think, staying with Sony is probably the right move. Blackmagic looks like they're doing some great stuff. I'm not ignoring them at all.
So here's what I wanted to kind of get into. We have a Sony FS5. We bought it really towards the end of the FS5's life. This thing has been around for a while. When it first came out, it was a fantastic camera, and it still is a fantastic camera, but you do deal with a relatively noisy sensor if you don't know how to, shoot correctly and adjust for that. It's just by default, it's just an older piece of equipment. It came out a while ago. It's not going to be as, as clear as some of the new stuff.
Sure.
You deal with some of the other kind of shortcomings of it. The menu system is a little complicated. I don't really have a problem for it because I don't know. I know I'm looking for a specific feature and I'll just scroll until I see that specific thing.
Yeah.
But some people, it's not very intuitive if they want, adjust the video settings and they don't know where to find that because there's 15 pages of
Definitely.
them.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. But this is kind of a gray area for us because I'm very happy with everything that camera has taught me. And the rest of the team and everything we've worked with, from being able to even shoot, raw footage on it and messing around with, understanding that we're probably not going to do that unless we really need to. But learning these things and learning how to use the camera and really just helped me learn, for one thing, what it is to shoot, cinema style stuff, to shoot on a manual lens. How to use the camera correctly for, more cinematic shots, how to, use light, how to use ND filters, because those are built into the camera, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it's done great work for us. The question is, I'm not sure it was the right decision at the time to get one. There really wasn't anything else available. But now with so many things that have popped up, perhaps that's going to be the next piece of equipment that we hope to upgrade. I wouldn't say that we outgrew it, but it's just a matter of...
it's like price versus need.
Exactly.
And again, that law of diminishing return. What do we need, and what technology is desirable, or do we not necessarily need for the price? And there's a lot out there for a lot less than the Sony FS5 that could do a lot more for us, and also cost less. And that's the thing. I think a lot of people spend money on, price of your equipment because they think it's going to be better or they're going to be able to take advantage of these features, when in reality, something completely different for much cheaper could serve the same purpose.
Right, exactly.
So.
And even still, now with Blackmagic releasing all the stuff that they're releasing.
Yeah, man, 6K.
the 6K is fantastic.
It's crazy.
All the new Ursa cameras that just came out between the 12K and there's a 4.6K version of it too.
Beautiful stuff.
And they're all within
sensor.
They're all within relatively good, price ranges.
Yeah.
They're not unattainable.
Cheap.
They're not as cheap as an A7 at this, not an A7, but an FS5 at this point.
Yeah.
But you are gonna get a very modern camera.
For sure.
So you're gonna get to experience more modern features. This camera definitely makes you work.
For sure.
I'm very glad that we had it for the fact that some of the new stuff is just not going to be as, not to say annoying, but it's not going to demand as much focus as maybe the FS5 has.
No. You think about everything, everything
Right, exactly.
was thought out, where opposed to, the A7, it's some of the stuff is kind of automated for you. You can kind of just turn your brain off and kind of sink your mind into what you're looking at. Rather with the FS5, it's kind of like driving a stick versus driving an automatic car.
Right, exactly. So as far as your ideas, what equipment would you like to see? What is something? I know Jack's a big Blackmagic fan. I know he would love to see some Blackmagic stuff.
Yeah.
Myself, I'm really hoping for an update to the FS5, FS7,
Same,
whatever
for
they
sure.
come up with now. I know there's a new FX9.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen it.
I just saw it, yeah.
It's absolutely surreal.
Yeah.
I saw some of the footage it produces and the things it can do.
It's amazing. We were just talking about the new Canon release as well.
Right,
the R5.
The R5 and the R6.
8K, so... Yeah, I don't know. And Blackmagic just released, 12K? What was that?
Yeah, the 12K Ursa.
12K Ursa as well, so there's a lot of... I heard July was camera month.
Absolutely.
For 2020,
I'm sorry to everybody who bought a camera right before.
Yeah, man. It's a good time to be holding out. And we have rumors, not rumors, but confirmation of the A7S III coming within the next couple of months as well. So, as far as cameras or equipment, I'd like to see come in within the next year. Definitely, something to either match or replace the FS5. We've gotten a lot of use out of the FS5, but I believe there's something that could maybe challenge us more or give us something more to kind of experiment
with. Something that's going to be a little bit more rewarding.
Exactly.
Because the reward of shooting with an FS5 camera is your footage looks good.
Oh,
because
absolutely.
if you don't, the reward of shooting with a Sony A7 is, wow, I've got this amazing shot, or I've got this really awesome motion. The reward of shooting with the FS5 is, wow, I didn't mess up.
I didn't mess up.
Yeah, there's no grain in my footage. It looks good.
I mean, the biggest thing for me is with the A7s is the embodied stabilization. That's and apart from the FS5, you don't have that. So it's the lenses have to have IS, or you're gonna have some shaky footage, and that's a big thing for me. Is having stable footage is everything.
Absolutely.
It sets apart a professional video from someone that's just holding a camera. And like I said before, a lot of this stuff can be done handheld now because of that IS, that in-body IBIS, which is super important for, run and gun filmmakers like us,
Right. So exactly. So as far as our future, we're very happy with the Sonys as far as the mirrorless stuff that we've got now.
It's great.
And we're hoping to see, and we'll keep everybody updated, once these things, for one thing, come out and people get their hands on them.
Absolutely.
We're hoping to get something that is going to, the reward of which is going to be not, it doesn't look bad. The reward of it is going to be, wow, it looks absolutely incredible. And this isn't to diss the FS5 at all. Even bringing it into post-productions, and if I'm shooting on a Sony A7 next to the FS5, if we shot the FS5 stuff correctly, I can grade that footage so much deeper.
It looks beautiful.
Even skin tones is the biggest thing, is with, being able to shoot, 444 if I want to, and the other options that it has. Those colors really do stand out. It really is different from an A7. It is better, but it's just not better enough.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep. There's no question the dynamic range can be pushed. There's no question that it's sharp and clean. They shoot Netflix series on this thing.
Exactly.
It is a very valuable piece of equipment. But it has to lend to your team. It has to lend to the story. It has to be comfortable. That's my biggest thing, is I want to be comfortable with the equipment that I'm using, and that was a big part of why I was really happy with you guys using the Sony ecosystem when I came in. I was ready to, I was hired, and I was ready to come in here running, because I already was comfortable
to
with
it,
the
yeah.
equipment that you guys use, and I was able to just take complete advantage of that. And, that's very rare in this industry. We're all using different stuff. So to come in here and have you guys in the Sony ecosystem was awesome.
All right.
So, you want to go?
Oh, yeah, I was going to move us on to the story and lessons of the week, but, you're at the top of this list here.
Well, I'm going to save that actually for next week. But before we do wrap things up, I do want to give a couple of shout outs. One to our two sound engineers / camera operators today, Joe and David. Second to Uncle Vinny tuning in from Florida.
Yes.
And third,
Hey.
me and Andrew wanted to take a minute to thank Jared for all of his hard work.
Of course, man.
And
Thank you,
dedication
guys.
that he's brought to the company. For those of you that don't know, Jared's been with us for about 7-8 months now.
Yeah.
And it's been a wonderful 7 or 8 months. He's been an amazing addition to the company. He's done so much for us, and I've got to see him grow in his position, along with him, assisting everyone with growing in their position.
For sure. I appreciate that, Matt.
And, we've learned a lot from you, and I hope you've learned, a lot from us, maybe from just the business
much.
side of the marketing.
For sure, man.
And we're going down a good path, and we're so excited to have you here with us. So I wanted to take a minute to thank you for that.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Matt.
All right, absolutely.
It's a little bit of a sneak peek for next week's episode. It's going to be titled "How to Run a Startup," and we're going to have a couple of guests on there, but I'm going to keep that a little bit of a secret. So yeah, you guys have anything else to add?
No, that's it. Thank you guys for tuning in.
Yeah, excited to be here this week. Thank you guys for having
Jared,
me.
we
I
hope
appreciate it.
we'll have you
Yes.
on again, definitely.
Absolutely, for sure.
And to the audience, make sure you follow us on Facebook or Instagram. Our Facebook is Everyday Podcast FB, and our Instagram is Everyday Podcast IG. Our website is everydaypodcast.biz. That's B-I-Z at the end. You can also email us with any questions, comments, concerns, all the above, at info@everydaypodcast.biz. That's B-I-Z. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. Have a great rest of your week, and we hope to see you here next week.